Now, if you're just joining us, Tera Roberts and me, we are talking about free agency right now. We're going to look at the running back position because there are some big time names here at running back. And we know how the NFL has valued running backs in recent years, or devalued them, so to speak. There's been running backs who've been tagged that are not going to be playing on a tag this year. So we can see some big name running backs moving on, which is exciting. I mean, unless that's your running back from your team moving on, then maybe, hey, you're not as excited as most people. But let's talk about arguably the biggest name on this list, and that is Saquon Barkley. We've already heard that he's not going to get tagged by the New York Giants. What does that mean? He's going to be a free agent? Where's he going, Tera? Where do you want to see him go?
I want to see him go to Dallas. I know, I get it, financial feasibility and whatnot, but we've watched multiple teams. I'm not advising that Dallas does this, for the longevity of their franchise, and they have to make some contract moves with some players in the very near future. But for the biggest splash, Dallas as the location for Saquon Barkley. It's such a Jerry Jones move right there. They'll either be going with a unknown committee, which is very possible, or they make a big splash and try and get the biggest name. They're not going to go and grab, they're not going to go and grab Devin Singletary or something like that. They're going to make a big splash, and Saquon Barkley is the shiny biggest name on the market. And it's a good situation for Saquon. He wants to go somewhere, and he needs to go somewhere where he's utilized as a 3-down back. And that's a perfect fit for Dallas. He'll be able to have a ton of goal line opportunities. He'll be more productive with them than Tony Pollard was. Receiving work. So of all ideal situations, that's probably the best one for Saquon to go to.
Well, I'm not quite there with Dallas, but I am sending him to your backyard. I want to send Saquon Barkley to the Houston Texans. Barkley's averaging roughly 99 scrimmage yards over his career there per game. Now you send him to a team like the Houston Texans, a team with CJ Stroud, with Nico Collins, with Tank Dell. They could even draft a wide receiver 3 here this season. So they could have one of the most prolific offenses in the National Football League heading into 2024. And none of these players are big tickets as far as the cap is concerned. So the Texans, they can go out there and they can spend a little bit of money and get Saquon Barkley into their backfield. It's a huge upgrade on Dameon Pierce. It's a huge upgrade on Devin Singletary. So for me, this makes too much sense for Saquon Barkley not to be a Houston Texan. Could you imagine CJ Stroud, what those numbers are going to look like with Saquon Barkley, not only running the ball, but in the passing game as well? This team could be unstoppable. We could be talking about a team that is going to push for a Super Bowl next season based on all these moving parts. This could be the best offense in the league in just 6-7 months' time here. Now, Tera, keeping on with these running backs, Josh Jacobs, where do you want him to be?
Now, see, you talk about the Texans. I can see Josh Jacobs in Houston. Saquon, that would be a good landing spot for him for sure. It would be beautiful. But Josh Jacobs, I think, would also fit in very well with the Texans in terms of how he profiles his capabilities, and really from an early down back perspective as well, because they could do maybe something similar that they did last year with trying the combination of Devin Singletary and Dameon Pierce. Didn't really work out. They ended up, funneling all of that to Devin Singletary. But I think Josh Jacobs gives them the best possible outcome here. And I like this for Jacobs as well.
It's funny because we're right here on the same wavelength. We think the Houston Texans could make a huge splashy type move here. It's just we got a different running back going there, because as a Raiders fan, I'm not ready to give up on Josh Jacobs. I've watched him have success. He is a Raider through and through, and he's one of Antonio Pierce's guys as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going to keep Josh Jacobs there in Las Vegas. The Raiders, they can still tag him. I think they can tag him for about $12 million here in year number 2. That'd be the second time they tag him. So for me, I don't think the Raiders can let Pierce's guy here walk. I think they're going to go out there and they're going to sign him. Hopefully they get him to a bit of a contract. But the signing of Josh Jacobs probably means they have to let go of somebody. And that somebody's probably a Clemson alum in Hunter Renfrow. So we'll see how those dominoes shape out there in Vegas. Now, the third running back on the list, again, he is basically a Raven, right? We both agree that Derrick Henry going to Baltimore is probably the best fit for Derrick Henry and for the Baltimore Ravens. Tera, why do you have him going to Baltimore, though?
I mean, when we look at Baltimore, obviously what has worked for them has been a committee. And I think that will continue. We know that Derrick Henry has a ton of miles on him. He doesn't need to be a true three. I think can he? Maybe he's Derrick Henry. He's built different, but he doesn't have to be. Why not? If you're going to have and it doesn't have to be a Justice Hill, but if you're going to have a Justice Hill, or you're going to have, snag one of these other, maybe you bring like a Devin Singletary or in there, something to play off of Derrick Henry and let Derrick Henry be that first and second down guy and then goal line guy. Just fits perfectly into the culture of what the Ravens run game has been, gives them someone that they can rely on, and kind of takes them out of that, hopefully, because of his reliability, takes them out of that carousel that they've had to go through at running back.
You mentioned that. The one thing Derrick Henry he's been healthy. He's going to be the guy that you can trust. The Ravens, they've put their trust in guys like J.K. Dobbins. That didn't work out so well. Gus Edwards, he's missed some time. Keaton Mitchell, he also suffered a knee injury at the end of the 2023 regular season. So we can see that in a Todd Monken type offense, Derrick Henry, along with, say, Keaton Mitchell, that is a good set of running backs to have. Much like what the Titans had there with Henry and Tajay Spears, you put Keaton Mitchell in there, a guy that he's not going to complain too much if he doesn't get the ball, but Derrick Henry can still be that lead back. I talked about a little bit of a regression. We've seen that in the yards per contact, yards per carry. It's kind of dipped over the last few seasons with Derrick Henry. He was still a top, 12 fantasy running back last season. So the fantasy production is going to be there. You put Lamar Jackson as a running quarterback, that's going to open things up there as far as Derrick Henry is concerned, where teams have to try and figure out what's going on with that RPO. Do you defend Derrick Henry? Do you defend Lamar Jackson? The one thing that the Ravens do is they get ahead of teams going into the fourth quarter, and that is when Derrick Henry is at his best. Now, another running back we talked about, let's keep the big names rolling here, and let's talk about Tony Pollard here, who was tagged last season, played on that tag, and maybe bet on himself, and it didn't work out. Tera, where do you got him going here?
Yeah, I hate that for him. I wish if he had, not gotten tagged and was able to get a contract, it obviously would have been a much better situation for him. It's just such a bad year for running backs in general, and the least ideal situation for Tony Pollard. I think basically what the league saw is that he's an electric running back when healthy, obviously, but is a 3-down back really within the realm of possibilities and best capabilities for him? Not really. He needs to play off of somebody. And I think the perfect situation for him to go into would be the LA Chargers. And this is assuming that Austin Ekeler is gone. We know that Harbaugh coming in will want to run multiple running backs. It's not going to be a workhorse 3-down back situation. I think we're going to see a committee there. And if Tony Pollard can play off of 1 or 2 other backs in a committee, I think we can see him get back to that Tony Pollard that he used to be and fit into that Ekeler light-ish role a little bit better. So that's what I see in terms of best case scenario for him.
Yeah, I agree that I think Pollard has his best success. He's most efficient with another back, which is why I put another back going to the Dallas Cowboys a little later, because the Dallas Cowboys, I have them retaining Tony Pollard. But there is that caveat where they have to bring in another running back. We'll talk about that. And it has to be a specific type running back, an Ezekiel Elliott type running back, but maybe a little bit younger. But yeah, for me, Tony Pollard, he is perfect for this Dallas Cowboys offense if giving someone that person to play off of. We've seen him be electric there in the passing game. We've seen him take, I think he was averaging about 6.1 yards per carry there prior to last season. So we know Pollard can be successful in this offense as long as he's not necessarily bringing in that workload, as long as he can be spelled from time to time. And that's what I kind of have going here a little bit later. Now, you mentioned Austin Ekeler. He could be franchise tagged by the Chargers. You know Ekeler wants to get paid. Another one of those running backs that said, you know what? Okay, I'll play, but I don't like it. And maybe it kind of hurt his free agency going into this season, which he said it sucks for him because he didn't live up to the expectations that he previously had done. So when you look at Austin Ekeler, what's a good fit for him? Where's a team that could probably appreciate him?
He wants to get paid, and this is a tough market for it because obviously he's the old man here with multiple big name young guys on the market. So it's going to be difficult for him to get that multi-year good money kind of contract that he's looking for. And I think maybe the best situation for him is to head to a team that is win now. And I know this definitely didn't feel like it, but Philadelphia is still a win now team. And we know that they like to get their running backs on the cheap. And it's possible that they can still find multiple running backs on the cheap. But I think we're going to see we're just going to see something a little different there from Philadelphia. They're bringing in, Kellen Moore. Right? So, hey, Kellen Moore, obviously very familiar with Austin Ekeler. We can get him in there in an offense where obviously a lot of the goal line opportunities are taken by Jalen Hurts. Bring some pop. We saw, what DeAndre Swift was able to bring to the offense. So I can get down with Austin Ekeler in Philadelphia.
I'm agreeing with you. I got him going to Philadelphia as well on like a 1-year deal, maybe around $12 million. Kind of we'll load up this money here, but it's going to be a 1-year deal or maybe a 2-year deal with a lot less money, depending on how Austin Ekeler and his camp want to work with the Philadelphia Eagles. But we know that this offensive line for Philadelphia is as good as it gets, even though they're going to be losing Jason Kelce, who is retiring here this season. So that's a big loss there for the Eagles, which means they want to pass the ball, and Austin Ekeler is probably the best pass-catching running back in the game. They had DeAndre Swift, who ended up having top 5 as far as rushing yards are concerned. We watched DeAndre Swift not be a running back going back to Detroit. You've heard me make fun of Austin Ekeler on the show for not technically being a running back. Well, if there's a team that he could be a running back on, it is his Philadelphia Eagles team. We saw, like I said, DeAndre Swift, top 5 running back as far as rushing yards last season. Then you add in Austin Ekeler's ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, and he makes this offense a lot more dangerous. So I got him going to Philadelphia as well. Now, speaking of DeAndre Swift, if we've got Ekeler going there, that means the Philadelphia Eagles do not need DeAndre Swift, which means DeAndre Swift is going where, Tara?
I think Minnesota could be an interesting landing spot for him. I don't think that Swift is going to come with a big price tag, so they can save a little money there. And Minnesota right now is kind of at a crossroads. And I think maybe this Swift as a signing will kind of dictate where they are heading. Minnesota can either push forward with a veteran quarterback like Kirk Cousins and continue to make that playoff and Super Bowl push, or they can reel things back and say, hey, we're gonna get a young quarterback in here. We're gonna move up in the draft. We're gonna get somebody, and we're just gonna reset. My gut tells me that they do try to push forward, and the best way to push forward, you're going to need a running back that you can rely on. Swift has proven at this point. He did prove that he can make it through an entire season. He can handle workload, and he'll come in cheap, very friendly, because it sounds like you got to pay Kirk Cousins if you're going the veteran situation there. So I think Swift could be an interesting fit for them.
And I'm going to do this because I love driving Major nuts, and he's not here to defend himself. But I want to send him to the New England Patriots there with Ramondre Stevenson. Pew, 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 pew. Why? Because I can. Because, hey, look, again, I think DeAndre Swift is going to come on the cheap. And I think when the musical chairs, the music stops playing, that is where he's going to end up landing because there's nowhere else to go. And luckily for him, luckily for a lot of these running backs that are on the second tier as far as running backs are concerned, after Austin Ekeler, that drop-off, this is not a great class for running backs coming out of the draft. So they're not going to necessarily be displaced. There's some good running backs. They're not a Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs caliber. So that's something we don't have to worry about. New England, they're an interesting team because they are currently sitting third as far as the draft is concerned, which means they can go out there and get themselves a quarterback such as a Jalen Daniels there, which could definitely open things up for Stevenson and DeAndre Swift as far as how they want to run the ball. Or they can use that draft pick and possibly entice the Chicago Bears and go get Justin Fields. So there's things that the New England Patriots can do that other teams can't based on where they're at the draft. I think that could affect how they attack free agency as well. So it'll be interesting to see all the dynamics with a non-Bill Belichick type team. We're used to seeing New England operate a certain way. I don't necessarily think that's what we're going to see this offseason, which means they're not going to sign 2 tight ends at big-time money. Let's put it that way. Now, J.K. Dobbins is another interesting running back here because we don't know what we're going to get. We don't know if he's going to be 100% healed. One thing we do know is he's talented when healthy. So, Tera, where can you see him landing next season?
Yeah, this is tough because that was such a significant injury for him. We're just hoping that he comes back and can get things going. when we're looking at the New York Giants, we know that Saquon is leaving. So we know that something has to happen there in New York, and you cannot replace a Saquon. So what are you, the New York Giants? You got Daniel Jones there. You're rumored to maybe be investing in a new quarterback. So maybe you're starting over. You're probably drafting a receiver. Things can be heading in, several different directions for them. My gut tells me that they try to find a running back in the draft. It's, you talked about the class. That's not super impressive, but there's some depth there. So maybe you invest in a running back via the draft, and then you get yourself a low cost free agent who you maybe take a chance on and see if they can bounce back to what they were supposed to be. And you get, a Saquon light situation, because I don't think that Dobbins is ever going to be Saquon, but we know that he is talented and can be a lead back if he can, remain healthy. So I think that the Giants take a chance on him. See if he can get healthy. It wouldn't be the first time they took a chance on somebody to see if they got healthy. I know that's terrible. But it wouldn't be the first time they took a chance on a guy with injury issues to see if they can get healthy. So it profiles in terms of, what they like to do in terms of taking a risk and seeing if it can pay off. Hopefully Dobbins can come back and it can pay off, and we can get him in that Giants offense and hopefully an improved offensive line.
Yeah, and speaking of offenses, I want to send J.K. Dobbins to a very good offense that already has a back there, more of an insurance policy. Hey, we know that J.K. Dobbins can do what he can do. Unfortunately, we need him to rest up. Luckily, the Cincinnati Bengals, right now, I got Joe Mixon still being a Cincinnati Bengal, which means Tyler Boyd is probably gone. Just trying to figure out how to do this money kind of situation here. So J.K. Dobbins is going to come in on the cheap. They've got Chase Brown there. I get it. But J.K. Dobbins can basically redshirt. They can get a good look at him. So then when Joe Mixon does move on next season, J.K. Dobbins has been in that room. He's seen how the team operates. The team has got a good look at him. And basically they'll get him again on the cheap after Joe Mixon leaves. And that's going to be huge for the Bengals because they're going to be paying some money to some other free agents. Devin Singletary, Tera, Houston Texan, kind of rejuvenated his career somewhat there on the back end of the 2023 regular season. Where do you see him fitting in?
So I said before that, we talked about Austin Ekeler and the Eagles, that traditionally Philadelphia does like to get their running backs on the cheap here recently. And if you were looking to get somebody on the cheap that can give you a little pop, I mean, I feel like look no further than Devin Singletary. That feels like the pure definition of a guy that you don't have to pay a ton. He's not hitting the market with a top price tag, but he's also someone that you feel confident if, behind a competent offensive line, he can actually do pretty well. He proved himself there with the Texans in terms of the ability to, obviously, we know he's got the receiving work, but he showed himself to be strong on the early downs as well. Good with goal lines. So yeah, multiple 100-yard games. I feel like this is someone who profiles as being that guy that Philadelphia can, toy around with in preseason and say, you know what? I think this is going to be he's going to be our guy heading into the season. He'll be our RB1. So yeah, Devin Singletary in Philly just kind of makes sense.
Well, recent memory is Philadelphia is not afraid to take a risk. And if they made a mistake, they're not afraid to basically not play the guy. Rashad Penny is what I'm kind of trying to say here. I mean, hey, I'll go on record here. I thought Penny was going to have a huge season last year. That didn't quite work out the way that I thought. But hey, DeAndre Swift, he did well. Devin Singletary, Austin Ekeler, if the Eagles do grab both these running backs, as you're kind of hinting at, I think they're going to be in a good spot. I think they both complement each other quite nicely, where the Eagles don't really have to change from one to the other. Now, I've got Devin Singletary going to the Denver Broncos with Javonte Williams there for the most part. I know there's some other backs involved in Denver, but again, Javonte Williams coming off that ACL injury started looking a little bit better as the season went on. Another insurance policy here for the Denver Broncos because we know that Devin Singletary can get the job done. And we know that he's disrespected. James Cook, Devin Singletary. Dameon Pierce, Devin Singletary. Singletary outperformed both those backs in those opportunities. If he goes to Denver, he might very well outperform Javonte Williams, which would, again, mean I'm eating more crow. But that's for another day altogether. Now, a former Green Bay Packer, A.J. Dillon. What is a good fit for him? Because I just don't see him being back in Green Bay this season.
No, I don't see him being back in Green Bay. And quite frankly, I don't, we had hopes for him. Obviously, fantasy football minds had hopes for him when he would finally hit free agency. And it just, he does not and has not looked like the guy that you can rely on as a third down or as a three down back. Someone that is, even as an early down back, it's kind of sketchy. You don't want to build your running back room around him. I think he's going to settle into a backup role. And when I'm looking across the league in terms of places that need a solid, reliable, dependable guy who can be a good backup for you, but obviously is not going to be a major threat to your starting running back, I think the LA Rams makes sense. You can't sit there and, love Kyren Williams. Obviously, this is not a knock on Kyren Williams, but you can't sit there and, just hedge your bets on being able to make it by without him if something were to happen with injuries like it did last year. So get yourself a nice, solid backup running back that can come be a nice stand-in if injury were to happen. And I think A.J. Dillon fits that bill.
Well, you mentioned injuries, and Kyren Williams, he did miss some time last season due to injury. We've seen Darrell Henderson, we've seen Freeman, we've seen Ronnie Rivers all take shots there. It wasn't the same. At least with A.J. Dillon, we've seen him have some success when Aaron Jones has gone down. So we know he can be a option in the run game for a team if they need one for a week or two. Now, for me, I watch the Buffalo Bills and I think, hey, what do the Buffalo Bills want to establish there with James Cook? They went out there and they got Damian Harris. He's a no-nonsense type running back that likes to pound it between the tackles. That didn't work out because of injury. Then they went out and got another big back there in Leonard Fournette. Obviously, that didn't work. So the Bills are kind of telling me they want a big back to kind of complement James Cook. Well, A.J. Dillon, he fits that mold for me. So I think that A.J. Dillon in Buffalo, in that weather, I mean, he's already played in Green Bay. The weather's crap there. It's like a Southern Canada province, basically. Well, Buffalo's no different. So we look at this, it's going to be, you don't want to tackle a guy like A.J. Dillon. And in Buffalo, I think we've seen the snow there, man. He's built for that weather. He's like a Clydesdale out there. So I like A.J. Dillon going to Buffalo. And finally, the last running back, my 10th running back here, it is Gus Edwards. Where do you like Gus Edwards heading here in 2024?
I mean, I think he can just, remain in Baltimore and just close out his career there. But if not, I could see him going to Tennessee. You probably need somebody to play off of Tajay Spears, obviously. We would love to see him transition into a three-down back role, and I think that makes sense. But you need to, be careful there. Obviously, size being a wee bit of a concern, and injury history as well. So get yourself a nice, solid, big back to be the opposite of him. And Gus Edwards fits that.
Hey, we're both on the same page here. We both see Gus Edwards as a nice complementary back. I got him going to the Dallas Cowboys to complement Tony Pollard. I think Gus Edwards will have success in Dallas, and I think Tony Pollard is going to become more efficient because of what Gus Edwards brings to the Dallas Cowboys offense, much like how they had Ezekiel Elliott. I think Gus Edwards and Ezekiel Elliott are pretty good comps there as far as that power run game is concerned in Dallas. So I got him going to the Dallas Cowboys, and I really like how we kind of talked about this. We're basically on the same page on the value of Gus Edwards and what these teams are looking for, such as the Dallas Cowboys, such as the Tennessee Titans, looking to find those complementary pieces to the backs that are already there.